welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week. This is going to be the astro weather for June the 2nd through the 9th, 2024. Today we're going to take a look at the transits for the next week, and we're also going to touch on this very powerful trine between Jupiter in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, give me a comment, give me a thumbs up, let me know what you guys think for the week ahead. Outside of this really powerful trine between Jupiter and Pluto, we're going to be seeing so many other communication aspects in the skies. There's so much going on that we have to unpack before we even get into the week ahead. But another news, something else that's going to be happening is going to be Mercury entering into the sign of Gemini. So Mercury's moving into its home sign in its domicile where it performs very well. This is going to be also aiding some of the communication aspects early in the week as we see Mercury align with Jupiter and trine Pluto. So when we see Mercury in Gemini, this is going to be obviously really highlighting Gemini themes like communication, intellect, and being flexible because it's a mutable sign. So some things that you guys want to watch that's going to be kind of highlighted throughout this particular transit for the next few weeks is just enhanced communication in general. When we see Mercury in its ruling sign of Gemini, it's making communication a lot easier. It also makes it more powerful, because it's going to be boosting our ability to communicate effectively. And so that can be writing, that can be speaking, or through other communication mediums. So it's definitely a transit that makes it a great time to engage in meaningful conversations, share ideas with other people, and express yourself more clearly. Now, Mercury is also known in this sign to really be highlighting intellectual curiosity. If there's something that interests you, whether it's a new topic, subject, maybe even a new hobby, it's definitely encouraging you to get curious, get out there, and start listening or reading new content. So because Mercury is moving through an air sign, it's going to be really stimulating anything in regards to mental communications or learning. So during this transit, you might find yourself more interested in learning new things, exploring different ideas, and engaging in intellectual pursuits. I find that when Mercury is in Gemini, our mind is more open to new information and we're more likely to enjoy discussions or debates and seeing the other side of the coin. Now, this is a transit that's known for its versatility and its adaptability because Mercury is about changes, especially in the mutable sign of Gemini. So this is going to be giving us the opportunity to practice duality and versatility. Now, this transit can help us adapt to different situations and communicate with people from various backgrounds. So you might find yourself more flexible in thinking and be able to see multiple sides of a situation. Watch for highlighted social activity, as a air sign is always about communication, connection, right? Spending time and kind of relaying information to other people. So I definitely feel like this sign is going to increase our desire for social interaction, especially with Venus being in Gemini. We really enjoy good conversation, moving around, going on trips, sharing new books or podcasts with other people. And we might find ourselves more so drawn to networking events or group activities. Social media may be very active also throughout this week as we see all these planets move through the sign of Gemini. Watch for increased mental activity. It's likely that your mind is going to feel a little bit more active, but in a good way. This is really allowing us to have increased creativity, productivity, and also be a little bit more efficient. However, it can represent kind of having a restless mind and kind of juggling too many things or taking on too many things at one time. So be mindful that you want to have an outlet. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew. The only challenge I would say to watch for is it is possible as we start seeing Mercury dance with Jupiter that our mind is like on fire. There's so much information coming in. It's going to feel like information overload. And that can be positive news, good news, new plans of things that we're planning in terms of education or travel. But as we see it connect with Pluto, there can be issues that come up with communication. So be mindful that there can be some misunderstandings, although I think it's going to be more likely as Mercury, gets into Gemini and squares off with Saturn and Neptune down the road. But we can feel that because Gemini has this dual nature, there can be a tendency to have like mixed communication or kind of being flippant or, hard to kind of pay attention. So it's important to really think before you speak and ensure your words are clear and concise. There's going to be lots of big announcements happening with Jupiter conjunct Mercury. So it is possible that it can be that there's so much stuff coming in at one time that we get like really kind of mentally overly excited, right, about some of the stuff that's going on in our lives and also out in the world. In my opinion, the best way to work with the Mercury and Gemini transit, I think, is really just engaging in activities that are going to stimulate your mind. So if you want to go for a walk and listen to a podcast, if you want to do a crossword puzzle, if you want to start journaling or maybe learn a new skill, Gemini rules the hands. So anything that you can do like knitting or drawing, these are excellent ways to be able to kind of relieve stress and also make use of this transit. Definitely take advantage of the increased social activity. Spend time with friends, get out there, network with other people, connect with others, find ways that you can collaborate with groups of people, because we're going to learn that two minds are better than one with this transit. Be mindful that your words, be mindful of your words and ensure you're communicating clearly to avoid any misunderstandings. Try not to talk over people. That can be something that can kind of happen with Mercury conjunct Jupiter. We can be so excited to share that we're not always listening to others. And make sure that, you're open to new information that comes out during this transit. Don't be afraid to stand your ground if you have very strong beliefs. Jupiter is known not just for abundance and positivity, but he's also known for laws and anything in regards to the legal system. So a lot of people are going to be speaking very openly, very passionately about their beliefs, about their morals, about their culture, perhaps even about their religion or education. So we want to make sure we create a dynamic where everybody can share, everybody's being respectful, and nobody's feeling railroaded in communication. Watch for feeling mentally overwhelmed. If you need to, take breaks. Don't feel like you need to be constantly on like a fax machine. Take breaks to rest and recharge if you're feeling a little mentally frazzled. Now, I'm really excited about the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. I feel like this is going to be good news for a lot of people. We're combining Mercury with Jupiter, and the conjunction is the strongest aspect in astrology. So you're bringing together the energy of expansive, optimistic energy with Jupiter, and it's connecting with the communicative, intellectual nature of Mercury in the sign of Gemini. So this conjunction is going to be emphasizing themes relating to communication, learning, and also mental exploration. Now, the Sabian symbol that this conjunction is going to be happening at is going to be taking place at 2 degrees of Gemini. So if you have any personal planets from 0 to 4 degrees of Gemini, this is very personal for you. And it's a very significant transit, I believe, for anybody who is ruled by Mercury, so my Gemini and Virgo risings, as well as anybody ruled by Jupiter. So that's going to be really impacting my Sagittarius and also my Pisces risings. Now let's read the Sabian symbol for 3 degrees of Gemini because we round up. And this is going to be Gemini 3, the Garden of Two Soleres. It's French, I don't know, I'm probably mispronouncing it, but the theme is the fruits of privilege. So the symbol speaks to artistry and the aesthetic self-expression. It also speaks to the self-confidence and authority that come from social power and wealth. The image of the Garden of Two Soleres focuses on magnificent gardens constructed at the time of King Louis, the former royal prince in Paris, and emphasizes grace, luxury, and beauty. It also alludes to the historical preservation of those things that express values of any group of people. On a practical level, the image suggests incidental benefits that flow through society through a creative use of time and money. At its highest, it represents philanthropy and the support of and encouragement of all forms of creative self-expression. Watch for boasting and pretense to social superiority. The accent is on aesthetics and artistry. Visit a museum or other cultural institutions that can lift your spirits and stimulate your imagination. Your greatest advantage lies in the beauty of your surroundings. Try hanging a new painting, buying some flowers, or even rearranging your furniture. Guard against name dropping or trying to impress others with your social standing. Try to curry favor will be seen as will be seen for what it is. Stepping stones are luxury, leisure, aesthetics, culture, beauty, artistry, wealth, social position, and creative self-expression. For me, when I think about this, I mean, sometimes the Sabian symbols can be quite literal. I mean, we look at them figuratively speaking, but I think about, you know, like cultural refinement, right? So that and beauty. So like the gardens, I think historically are seen as something that's a beautiful park in Paris, but it's symbolizing cultural refinement, artistic beauty, and the value of preserving and enjoying nature within a civilized society. It's really emphasizing the need for social interaction and community. So gardens, especially in cities, are places where people gather and interact and enjoy and share public spaces. So the symbol can emphasize the importance of social interaction and community engagement and the enjoyment of public amenities. It may be a time where we're feeling like, you know what, we want to go out and socialize in public parks and spaces. We want to pick up trash. We want to, you know, plant flowers. We want to create these spaces that everybody can enjoy, and that it can be a space where we can be kind of disconnecting from gadgets and all of those things and really reconnecting with our local communities and having interactions with people and building on our relationships. This is likely going to be promoting more balance and harmony, because obviously like a well-maintained garden represents balance, right? If things are falling apart and weeds aren't pulled and flowers are dying, then it's not going to really feel like it's in balance. But a well-maintained garden will represent balance and harmony and the ability to create order and beauty out of like nature's chaos. So obviously these are well-known gardens, right? They're well kept. They are in some, I guess, places kind of seen as some of the more beautiful royal or regal gardens that there are. So it can really be putting an emphasis on the need to create balance and harmony in our own lives and our environment, and having a sense of pride with what we create, what we tend to, you know, what we grow and how we carry ourselves. I see gardens also as a space of like leisure and relaxation, which is interesting. You know, we're going to see Mars go into Taurus this week, so that's definitely going to be a theme. But the symbol might be encouraging us to take time to relax and enjoy life's pleasures and appreciate the beauty that's all around us. And obviously, you know, there is some kind of connection to historical and cultural awareness if we're talking about these gardens, because this particular garden in Paris has historical significance, reminding us to honor and learn from the past while enjoying the present. The aspect of the symbol may suggest a connection to history and culture, encouraging appreciation for heritage and tradition, but also upholding that within society, like maintaining a sense of history and beauty and being able to, you know, in the hustle and bustle of modern day cities, pay homage to, you know, the roots and the higher kind of society, or the appreciation for beauty and the connection to, you know, the outdoors that we seem to have lost. Now, in a broader kind of perspective, astrologically, I think really what it's saying is that we're going to benefit with this conjunction by engaging in social activities, appreciating beauty, culture, and finding balance and harmony within our surroundings. So definitely take time to stop and smell the roses, you know, connect with others in meaningful ways, find ways to be able to do that. That's going to be encouraging communication and getting to know more about other people or other cultures. Now, what will the Jupiter-Mercury conjunction bring, right? So already we have Mercury in Gemini, so that's already enhancing communication. But when this conjuncts Jupiter, I really feel like it's going to be about positivity, good news, having a little bit of humor in how we relate to other people, right? Might be like a little kind of like dark humor because it's going to trine Pluto. But I definitely feel like this is even further enhancing communication skills, because Jupiter is, you know, making everything bigger. So yes, it could be big news, big headlines, and it's going to be at a 2. So it can be involving money, resources, the planet, you know, food, banking. But I think it's also about involving sharing of ideas and information. I think it can also be about, you know, speaking very clearly and also like very persuasively. There is a sense of like boastfulness that comes with like Mercury, Jupiter aspects. And I think it can be a wonderful time for speaking and for teaching and anything that involves sharing information. I love Mercury, Jupiter aspects for intellectual growth, because I feel like Jupiter teaches us to expand our horizons and go in places or go to places that we've never been or experienced before, or to dip into topics or subjects that we've never experienced before. So you may find yourself this week a lot more curious and eager to learn new things, and it can be a great period for studying, taking courses, engaging in intellectually stimulating conversations, and other belief systems or philosophies. I do think it's going to enhance optimism and positive thinking. That's the positive of this particular transit. Because Jupiter brings the optimism, right? He's bringing the silver lining. He's talking about making things big and expansive and really talking about the bigger picture. So when we combine that with Mercury, this can lead to a much more upbeat and enthusiastic approach to life, especially regarding intellectual pursuits and communication. This is going to be really positive for those of you guys who are traveling during this time or maybe planning traveling during this time, because both Mercury and Jupiter have associations with travel, where Mercury is more kind of connected to short trips and what you're doing locally and vehicles and maybe even like booking things. Jupiter is associated with longer journeys. So things connecting to airlines, or, you know, if you're traveling across the world, or if you're going to be, you know, going to places that you haven't been, those two can come together. And I think the conjunction is indicating opportunities for travel, either physically or through exploring new ideas or cultures. I love this for learning new languages. I think this is a wonderful time that if you're like, hey, I've always wanted to go, you know, to like a Latin, you know, American kind of country. If you wanted to go to South America, you know, and you want to learn Spanish, wonderful time to consider doing that. And any other language, because, you know, Gemini deals with language and communication, and it can also be applications and things for translation. So those of you guys who are wanting to specifically learn languages, or maybe you're wanting to learn how to, you know, digitally edit something, or maybe you're wanting to learn how to put together, you know, your own blog or your own website or your own podcast, these are really great transits for that. You may be somebody who identifies as a student. Definitely Mercury is kind of like the student archetype. But you may also be somebody who identifies as the teacher, and that would be Jupiter. So if you're not on the spectrum of like wanting to learn something, you might be like, hey, I have a skill that I want to teach people, and like I want to put it on the internet, or I want to do how-to videos or tutorials, or I want to sell courses. This is a wonderful time for those of you guys who have particularly skills connected to like writing, public speaking, coaching. I could see Mercury, Jupiter as a part of that. People who are also heavily involved in publishing or education. This can be a time that is like prime time for being like, okay, I'm going to put together, you know, a course and, you know, teach other people something that I know. Mercury also in this sign is a little bit more short and concise, even though Jupiter tends to be a little bit like long-winded. So I could see some people going, okay, I have this like really involved topic that I want to teach, but rather than lecturing about it for several hours, I'm going to break it down into, you know, smaller kind of individual chapters or courses, so it's more so easily digestible. So just some food for thought on that. You know, we will see at some point this year, especially in June, you know, planets that will square Saturn and Neptune, which I think is going to be very clear, hard to kind of pay attention, hard to retain information, impatience-ness, you know, not immediately kind of getting like, not immediately getting satisfaction from what you're learning. Like we're not actually retaining the information. So we're going to want to space courses out. We're going to want to take our time. We don't want any of those you take a quick program online and then suddenly you get a certification. You know, we want to keep at it. We want to keep integrating what we're learning and kind of pace ourselves to make sure that we're really understanding, we're really comprehending, and we're integrating some of the things that we're learning. So take your time. Look for obviously themes involving like a broader perspective or like the bigger picture, right? Because when I think of Jupiter and his expansive nature, I think about how he's always trying to show us the bigger picture in life. That's why he has that connection to Sagittarius and the 9th house, because it's like the bigger purpose, the bigger meaning of life. While Mercury, on the other hand, especially in Gemini, is like wanting to focus on the details. So the combination allows us to integrate detailed information into a broader context, and it enhances our ability to understand complex subjects. So you can also, on the flip side, if you're not wanting to be like, okay, there's this really kind of involved, you know, process and I'm going to break it down and do it over time, this can help us simplify complex topics and make it easier, you know, to teach other people and like relate. Could it be surfacey? Sure, but it could also be like that introduction to just getting people in the door and getting them interested in what you're talking about or teaching. So great for social media and people who want to create like reels and TikToks and other posts and things where they're going to be suddenly having a lot of expansion and things will be blowing up overnight just from sharing your thoughts in some simple words. Yes, there can be some potential challenges because obviously we have Mercury coming into conjunction with Jupiter. So it can be a tendency sometimes to see we are estimating something that we're talking about without really thinking things through. There could be too much optimism. There could be a tendency to kind of embellish in stories and amplify things. So be mindful of that, especially with some of the trines with Pluto, that there can be intense communication and there can also be just being like ridiculously blindly confident. And we want to make sure that we actually know our stuff before we're speaking out and kind of sharing information with other people. Now, the final piece of this, and I talked to you guys about this last week, you've been feeling it all week long leading up to this Sunday. So if you guys are watching on Sunday, you're really feeling it now. But Jupiter will be in a trine to Pluto, and that is a rather somewhat unusual aspect. We see that every so many years. But when Jupiter is in alignment with Pluto, we're taking in the expansive energy of Jupiter in Gemini. So big words, big ideas, lots of information, and connecting it with Pluto in Aquarius. So this trine, I think, is rather auspicious. Because it's combining both expansive, optimistic, and powerful energies in a very harmonious way. I do think it facilitates growth. I think that's been the theme really the whole beginning of June. It's definitely about empowerment and it's about making positive changes, but these positive changes come with a change of frame of mind in how we think, how we communicate with other people, how we connect with other friendships, other partnerships, networks, right? Pluto in Aquarius is about changes that are kind of happening on the collective level for all of us. And I think a lot of people are more thinking about, okay, how can we put our heads together and create a better future? And how can we be less kind of fear motivated, less doom and gloom, like less accepting of the, everything's falling apart kind of narrative, and more about, no, we need to be the change that we need to see in the world. We might be incentivizing other people, encouraging other people, encouraging others to get out of their comfort zone. And I think really the key takeaways from this aspect for me is definitely transformation and growth, right? Transformation, Pluto, growth is going to be Jupiter. So when these two come together in a trine, these energies blend smoothly. A trine is traditionally seen as like a Jupiterian aspect, so it's considered beneficial. So we'll see that as these energies blend, it leads to significant personal and external growth. Obviously, it's happening in air signs, so it's more about our social connections, what we're learning, how we're communicating with other people, what's going on with technology and also media. But I do feel like this is a time where a lot of people are going to experience a period of profound personal development, and we're finally overcoming, right? We're overcoming past limitations and transforming our lives in a positive way. This is really good stuff. Like, this is some really amazing astrology for people who are like, I need to get out of my rut. I need to stop being afraid. I need to just kind of like make a decision and make a change and commit to it and stick with it. Wonderful for affirmations, writing down your goals. Like, that's something you want to be either writing down or speaking into reality this week, because there's a lot of power in words this week. Watch for themes of empowerment and also confidence. So, this aspect will be really focusing on expanding these, giving us more courage to pursue our goals and ambitions with determination and optimism. So it's like, yes, we don't stop, we keep going. Anything is possible. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. It's very kind of Jupiter, Pluto. You may find yourself also with these aspects setting up this week, taking on a leadership role or tackling challenging projects with a newfound sense of confidence and authority. Confidence is Jupiter, authority is Pluto. So they can work side by side together as long as they understand that both of these energies need to be recognized and acknowledged. It's not all butterflies and rainbows with Jupiter. Pluto comes in and says, yeah, we can have the change, and we can have the growth and we can have the wealth, but what are you willing to, change when it comes to your future goals? Where do you need to work with other people better to facilitate this change? Where do you have to think outside of the box and be willing to kind of end certain things to bring new things in? I really feel like this is going to be really wonderful for those of you guys who are really wanting to kind of sit in the driver's seat of your own life and feel like you are finally making the changes that you want to see. Definitely with Pluto transits or aspects, we see a lot of depth. And so I think because this is happening in air signs, it's going to be about depth of insights and understanding. So basically watch for, profound insights and understanding, particularly in areas of philosophy, spirituality, and psychology. While Jupiter is more, about philosophy, it does have connections to spirituality as well because Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. Psychology, I think, is going to be a big theme. So we might hear some big breakthroughs in, mental health or just like the medical institutions in regards to communication and speech. Also, I think it's going to be about that fusion of technology and how that's impacting the way that we think and how it's affecting us, and how it can also be benefiting us in some ways for those who have had the inability to communicate or to speak, or they've been kind of struggling with issues with like reading and writing. So watch for, opportunities, I think, to dig deep into themes of like explorations of complex subjects that can lead to transformative insights and a more profound understanding of life. If Jupiter is about all of the sweetness that life has to offer and Pluto is about death, we're going to kind of be like, okay, there are certain situations in our life where something's coming to an end and it's bittersweet, but it's paving the way for a new beginning. And it's all how we think about it. It's all how we look at it. It's all how we talk about it. Watch for resourcefulness and strategic planning. I think this is going to be really strong, especially because Mercury is going to be nuzzled up next to Jupiter as it trines Pluto. And Pluto is strategic in his own right. So I think that with the resourceful nature that's going to come from Jupiter's, vision and optimism, and Mercury coming in and wanting to kind of, bring up all of this information, it's a really excellent time for long-term planning and resource management. So if you're somebody who's wanting to kind of come up with a plan for the rest of the year, or what you're going to be, learning, or where you're going to be traveling, this is definitely a really good time to develop strategic plans, and that can be for your business, your personal life, for education. That considers both your immediate needs and also your long-term goals. And this is really setting us up for sustainable long-term success. Don't underestimate the power of Pluto and Aquarius. Traditionally, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, and so this can be talking about timing and goals and how we're setting things up and aligning things to make sure that we're meeting our long-term goals. And that's through Gemini things like meetings, emails, conversations, right? Really kind of getting to the bottom of things. You're going to get further this week, I think, with encouragement rather than pessimism or, being a little too judgmental or heavy-handed with people. Sometimes with Mercury trine Pluto, that can happen. We can kind of be a bit of a tyrant. We can be demanding. But if you really lean into the Jupiter side of things and you're encouraging other people and you're focusing on the positive, you're going to see so much more growth than otherwise. And obviously there can be some very significant changes when it comes to our beliefs and our values, especially because I feel like, Pluto is very much connected to wealth. It's connected to our resources. It's about what we have and how we can develop more of it, and Jupiter's connection to our beliefs. So when you see these two kind of align, it's helping us, I think, finally tune and come into awareness of our true selves and also a higher purpose. So it's possible throughout this transit that you may undergo a spiritual or philosophical awakening of sorts. It may change your outlook on life and, help you align much more closely with deeper values. Okay, so many good communication aspects this week between Jupiter, Mercury, and also Pluto. Do not waste these transits, guys. Wonderful, wonderful communication transits. Something else we're going to see this week is June 8th, we're going to see Mars enter into the sign of Taurus. So if you happen to be a Aries or Scorpio rising, your chart ruler is on the move, so pay attention to that. Very important that we're looking at what's going on with Mars because of the connection with the North Node. So wherever Mars is going in the aspects Mars is making is reflecting some of the energies of the North Node in Aries, which is helping all of us get more so in touch with our own path, where we're going, what we want, what we're passionate about. So Mars moving through Taurus obviously is interesting because of its associations with Scorpio. It's kind of working with a polar kind of opposite energy. Taurus is a fixed earth sign, so it can be very focused on stability and resources and building. It can be a little stubborn, and this is a sign that's traditionally associated with Venus. So we've got Mars, which can be a bit of a combative, linear, direct, kind of masculine energy going through a feminine earth sign. So what we're going to be seeing is that Mars's action, drive, and assertiveness is combining with Taurus's quality and need for stability, patience, and sensuality. So some things that kind of come up with this, I think that it's a nice reprieve from having had Mars in Aries. Definitely it's been a really helpful transit the last 6 weeks. I think we've initiated a lot of things. We got a lot of things done. But on the flip side, it's been a little chaotic with, solar eclipse in Aries and a Mercury retrograde and the Chiron aspects. I think it's done. I think it's done its duty, and it can move on into Taurus. The positives that I would watch for with this transit is that Mars in Taurus, or if you have like Mars in the second house, they're known for being very persistent and steady in terms of their efforts because they're very determined. Right? The way that they approach things is very steady because they want to achieve their goals. So rather than rushing, there's a focus on working persistently and like having a method to getting things done. So keep that in mind. Things might slow down a little bit with Mars and Taurus. It needs to be kind of like incentivized to kind of do something. So it's a good time if you're wanting to take on a long-term project, or, let's say you want to renovate a house, or maybe you're, starting a garden. Something you have to work on consistently over time is something that you really want to be kind of doing during this particular time period. And it's something that should bring pleasure as well. Now, something else that kind of shifts when, Mars goes into Taurus is that there is naturally a focus on the material and financial matters. Because Taurus rules over money and it's connected to possessions and material security. So Mars here is really kind of driving efforts towards financial stability and acquiring material comforts. So something that may come up for you is you may notice that you're just really focused on improving your financial situation. And that can be through budgeting or maybe saving or making strategic investments, because Mars here really wants to focus on acquiring something, okay? Yes, granted, you may feel like you want to eat more, you might be craving those like sweets, you might be feeling like you're spending a little bit more money, right? There can be that indulgent side of Mars in this sign. Watch for increased sensuality and a desire for comfort, okay? That's what Taurus is known for. They're ruled by Venus, so they have this focus on sensual pleasures and what feels good, tastes good, smells good. So Mars being in this sign is going to heighten the desire for such experiences. So yeah, you're going to see that there's going to be a greater emphasis on enjoying good food. And you're going to see that you're going to want to be in comfortable or more beautiful surroundings, or be more aware or attracted to physical pleasures. Possibly leading to, indulgence in activities like cooking or decorating in the home, or gardening, or sculpting. So, there can be some good things that can kind of come from this particular transit. Some challenges that I would say that you would want to watch for is that this is notoriously a natal placement in a transit that has a tendency to be resistant to change. So, Taurus is a fixed sign. So, this can make people a little hesitant to getting outside of their comfort zone. Mars assertiveness may be met with stubbornness or reluctance to alter established routines. So you might feel like in certain situations, you or somebody else is kind of like digging your heels in and resistant to changes at work or in your personal life, preferring to stick with what's familiar and reliable, right? So we can kind of see some challenges there. Yes, obviously, Taurus is slow, right? We think of like the cow kind of grazing in the field. So there can also be a tendency for slow burning anger and stubbornness that can come up as well. This is not a placement that's known, to be combative or confrontational generally. But once you start to kind of upset the cow or the bull, there can be explosive outbursts. So we can see that some people are more stubborn and determined to stand their ground. We may see that during conflicts, a person, is much more likely to hold grudges longer and be less willing to compromise, insisting that their perspective or approach is the way to go. And there can be sudden kind of like blow ups that can happen, especially because one of the first things we're going to see throughout this transit is that Mars will come into a square with Pluto. So that's going to be some times to watch for that. But overall, I think this is a wonderful time to be really making practical and grounded decisions and taking action, because Mars is about taking action. So decisions and actions are much more likely to be well thought out during this transit, focusing on tangible results. So if you know that, you want to get into practical projects like home improvement, gardening, or any task that requires patience and careful planning, awesome time to do that. Just really take time to see whatever you're working at, it's going to need some time for it to grow. Okay. And we'll see the growth period eventually. We will see that, especially as Mars comes into conjunction with Uranus, and then Mars will go into Gemini and it'll conjunct Jupiter. So don't get frustrated with just that it may take a little bit longer to kind of initiate some of this stuff now that Mars is moving through this sign. Also this week, we're going to see a Venus cazimi, okay? So I talked to you guys about that a lot in the new moon in Gemini video. It's actually going to happen right before the new moon in Gemini. We're going to see Venus and the Sun come into conjunction. So there's a new Venus star point that is beginning, very similar to one that we saw in the, I think it was June of 2020. That was the last time we had it. Granted, this was a cazimi that happened, during a Venus retrograde. So that was happening in its retrograde motion. Venus is direct. She's not going retrograde to the beginning of next year. So seeing this cazimi seems to indicate that there's something that's like blossoming or blooming or being reborn when it comes to Venusian topics. Now, traditionally, when we see the cazimi, a planet is in a superior position. It's ahead of the sun, and it's kind of relaying something to the sun, which is seen as the king. Usually we work anywhere with, about 0.17 to about 1 degree with a cazimi. It depends on, what your astrological preference is, but the closer the better, basically. Once it's within that 0 and so many minutes degree, you're seeing the cazimi. Basically, I feel like this week, it's enhancing Venusian qualities. And it's interesting because we'll see not only is it factored into the new moon in Gemini, which is exactly conjunct Venus, but we will also see that for several days, Venus will move with the sun. So there is going to be an amplification of Venusian kind of topics coming up. So because Venus rules things like love and beauty and harmony, relationships, money, values, this Venus cazimi will amplify these particular topics. So we might find that on a personal level, our romantic kind of lives are highlighted or heightened for some reason. There's more feelings. There might be more increased appreciation for art and also for beauty, and a stronger desire for harmony in relationships. Now, it's going to be in the sign of Gemini. So I'm anticipating we're going to see some new rollout of like a new luxury car. We're going to be hearing about some, new Apple iPhone maybe coming out, or some new gadget, or anything even relating to like tech as well, because Venus in Gemini is about gadgets, but it's relating actually to Uranus and Taurus. So there can be opportunities to invest in things. Things might suddenly grow for tech stocks. We might see some new kind of beauty things that start to kind of emerge. And obviously Gemini is like doubles. So we might see that there's going to be, lots of things going on revolving around pairs. It also involves the hands. So we might see some new trends going on with watches and jewelry on the wrists and the fingers. That might be another theme. And Gemini is about media. So it can be social media. It can be about the news. It can be connected to newspapers. And also anything in regards to podcasting or blogging. So I think that there's going to be some new like beauty stuff that's kind of coming out, or people who are kind of relaying some new trends, possibly for the summer or for the fall. I do think that something else that generally happens, because the cazimi itself is kind of like this rebirth that happens with Venus, is purification and clarity, right? So the cazimi condition is thought to purify. It's meant to kind of provide clarity in the energies of Venus. So it'll lead to clearer insights in matters of the heart and finances and personal values. So it's possible that you may gain understanding of some relationship dynamic, or feel inspired to express your creative energy in some profound way. Likely it's how you communicate or how you're writing or something that you're reading about. Wonderful time to be really focusing on new love or new ways of communicating in love. I love love languages for anybody who's got, I think it's beneficial for any relationship, but anybody who's got like a Mercury-Venus conjunction, or maybe you have, Venus in the 3rd house, or a natal Mercury or Venus in Gemini. It's a wonderful way for being able to understand how other people want to be loved, and also being able to communicate how you feel loved, so you can show appreciation for partners and also give clarity to how you want to be treated in return. So if you guys haven't seen the love languages, or if you haven't taken the love language quiz, I really recommend doing that, because it can be really beneficial for your relationships, and it can provide clarity. So it can be a good time to be talking about it. This also means that there is a sense of renewal and new beginnings, right? So a Venus Cazimi with Gemini can be definitely a time where we're starting new relationships. There's second options, there's other people, there's new creative writing opportunities, there's new financial ventures that can kind of pop up. And I think that sometimes I've seen in my clients' lives, a lot of times, and also in my life, that whenever there was some really significant Venus Cazimi or Mercury Cazimi correlating with like my 5th or my 7th house, there was always some new relationship theme that was coming up, right? And it was being kind of revealed. So if you happen to be having this in those houses, I would really pay attention. This can also be, I think, a time where we're strengthening relationships. Like, I love a Venus Cazimi for renewing your vows and commitments to one another. I think that's great for reworking a contract negotiation, or, possibly for being able to, have a review of something and then talk about, like how you're performing and like what you're hoping to, get from your review. A time for planning a trip to better reconnect with a loved one, and whether that's visiting family, because Gemini can be about siblings or cousins, or just saying, hey, you know what, we have been so burnt out, we're working all the time, we need to kind of take time to reconnect, let's get out of town for the weekend. Wonderful transits for those things. It can be about initiating new relationships or having a fresh restart in an existing relationship. So watch for that. It can strengthen relationships as well, because it brings a positive development in regards to relationships, and it's enhancing also Venus tendencies of having like mutual understanding and cooperation, right? After all, Venus does want to have smooth relations. We may have to communicate and express what we want and what we need, but as long as we're doing that, then we can kind of better show up for other people and vice versa. So we may find that during the Cazimi, those of you guys who have had like some rocky relationship stuff, it may be easier to resolve conflicts and deepen your bond, while partnerships formed during this time may also have a very special significance. But overall, focus on values and desires, because this is a period for deeper alignment of your truest desires, leading to a more authentic and fulfilling expression of love and creativity. Reflect on what truly matters this week, such as, prioritizing meaningful relationships or pursuing genuine passions, participating in the things that you love, calling people and telling them how much you appreciate them. And if you miss them, if you love them, let somebody know. Now, obviously, this is going to be factored into that new moon that we're going to see in Gemini. So this is going to be wonderful, because the new moon in Gemini in itself is enhancing Gemini things. Okay, so how are all my Geminis doing? You guys are like, woo, we hit the lottery this week. I did a video on it, so if you guys haven't seen it, check it out, because I go in depth and I talk about the Cazimi aspect and the trines between, Mercury and Pluto and the conjunction to Jupiter, things that I already touched on in this video. But also I talk a lot about where it's an opening square to Saturn. And so there's pros and there's cons. I think that the pros outweigh the cons. I think it's very unusual to see a new moon with a Venus Cazimi. So that in itself, I think, is very fortuitous. I did go and look at the full moon down the road in 6 months in Sagittarius season. You can go take a look at it. Let me know what you think. It's going to square Neptune, and we're going to be in the midst of like Mercury retrograde, I think, in Sag. So things will be changing, right? But obviously this new moon is about new beginnings. It is saying we have to get out of the past with that square to Saturn. It is amplifying the need to communicate and also express new ideas, to learn something, to pick up a book, read a book. Go out and communicate with your neighbors. Get to know your community, right? Go out and go for a bike ride. Go to parts of the city that you haven't seen before. Take up a new hobby. Learn something new, right? Skills is something that really kind of comes up with Mercury. So Mercury conjunct Jupiter is like, how can you learn how to be more handy? You know, how can you learn how to fix something? How can you learn how to stitch or sew or, you know, grow food or anything? But also it's really stimulating communication and learning. This is a new moon that's all about new beginnings and communications. That's just the very kind of textbook standard, okay, you know, new moon in Gemini. But this can be kind of utilized by initiating a blog or starting a new study group or launching a new social media campaign, right? These are wonderful times to do that around the time of a new moon in Gemini. It's great for enrolling in courses, attending workshops, starting a book club, because it's really encouraging collective intellectual growth, right? That trine to Pluto is collective. So it's about the pursuit of knowledge and sharing information with people. Look for opportunities for social connections. I feel like it's wonderful for joining new organizations, for networking events, or reconnecting with friends and family. I like that it helps us be flexible and adaptable, because a new moon is saying, hey, you know, especially in Gemini, we can see a new path before us. We have options, we have choices that maybe we didn't have before. So some of us might adopt new technologies. We're trying different approaches at work. Maybe we're more open to alternative viewpoints. These are all wonderful things. And keeping an open mind with that Mercury, Jupiter, trine Pluto is so important, because you never know what group or association you're going to join where you're going to learn a whole bunch of new skills, or you're going to end up connecting with what might be your best friend or your future partner. And also vice versa, giving you the platform to be able to kind of share and teach other people as well. And wonderful, wonderful energy for problem solving. That's really, I think, my favorite thing about this new moon is that, you know, where Mercury and Jupiter is saying, okay, I have a bright idea, you know, the trine to Pluto is like how we can change things. I think it takes one voice to really speak up during this period that can really start a movement and can, you know, maybe post a video or a TikTok or a Twitter post, and then suddenly just speaking your mind or just sharing some little bit of advice or your philosophy, your belief, something about morals, about culture, about education, has the ability to just completely go viral. We're going to see some stuff like that that's going to happen with this. And, you know, I'm excited for it, because it's also, for you in your everyday life, a great time to be focusing on brainstorming sessions, creative projects, tackling complex problems with fresh perspectives. And sometimes that means we need to see somebody outside of ourselves. We need to phone a friend, right? We need to go and hang out with a family member. We need to call grandma. Something like that, where we're connecting with other people who are wiser, and they also have this internal knowing. That can be Pluto. So there is some really nice connections between the Gemini part of your chart and the Aquarius part of your chart throughout this entire week. So that's the long and short of what I'm going to be working through. Now I'm going to take you guys through the week ahead. A lot of these I've already talked about, but I just want to give you kind of the rundown of what this week is going to look like. Remember that a lot of the energy is taking place in the Gemini area of your chart. So pull out your chart, whether you have it printed out like you're an old school astrologer with scribbles all over it, or maybe you have an app, or maybe you have a picture of it, or it's on your software. Really locate where Gemini is, and I want you to look at also where Aquarius is, because these are the two places that are going to be really kind of lit up in this next week. All right, so we're starting today, June the 2nd, 2024. Happy Wednesday. Hello to all of my Sunday crew. I see you guys. It's so funny. I see you guys in the comments. I was talking to my husband about it the other day. He was like, we have like a whole crew of people on Sunday that are like drinking their coffee and doing their thing. And then we have like a whole other group of people that like kind of come and trickle in through the lives on Friday. And it's kind of like after hours beyond the veil, you know? Anyway, it's funny. But I hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday. I hope your weekend's going well. If you guys remember last week, and I gave you that heads up about how spicy today is going to be, then maybe you already have your day planned. If not, if you're watching this early, things are about to get spicy as all heck. So just be mindful of that. We wake up this morning and we have that moon in Aries, okay? So Aries is active, it's a little feisty, it's combative, it's independent, it needs an outlet because it's fire. And the ruler of Aries is Mars, and Mars is in the same sign. So you're going to see something happening all day, a lot of lunar transits where the moon is going to be leaving the conjunction to the North Node, where emotions have been amplified, likely since last night. We are then going to see the moon come into conjunction with Chiron, where there can be some emotional boo-boos, getting our feelings hurt, you know, tantrums, crying. We're more aware of our wounds. We're more prone to accidents, cuts, burns, bruises, headaches, migraines, abrasions. And then the moon will come into conjunction with Mars. So my goodness, wear a helmet, put pads on your kids if they're, out rolling around on roller skates. Be mindful if you're, cooking in the kitchen with your knives and your stoves, be careful not to grab the hot iron, that kind of stuff. That can really kind of come up with this transit. But the moon Chiron Mars is that hot, angry, emotional expression of some kind of pain or wounding. So be mindful that people are going to be sensitive. They can just snap like that. You can have tantrums from your toddlers more than usual. Being active is really helpful today. So if you can go for a walk, go for a jog, if you can find an outlet, if you can go to the gym, if you can just be giving yourself time to take care of and heal yourself, likely you'll avoid some of these kind of hang-ups. Not everybody is going to be able to avoid the flames today. So even if you're kind of staying in your lane, you'll see other people that are going to be kind of argumentative and combative and frustrated. And, something else that can kind of come up also here can be issues revolving around the past. The moon is connected to the past. So frustrations with home, with family, with roots, with mothers, with being, kind of rushed. I think of the moon Mars is like, your mother-in-law coming over and just kind of like henning you around the kitchen, it's like, okay, go away. Something like that can kind of be happening. And it can definitely, it can create some tension. Wonderful day for doing something, like I said, that's promoting self-healing. So when I have the moon go through here, granted my moon is in Aries, so I've been dealing with that transit. Would not wish it on anybody. I try to really watch for sunburns because I've noticed that that's something that happens a lot when I have this transit. I've also noticed migraines and headaches with this transit, sinus issues, allergy issues. But I've tried to focus more on like, okay, I'm going to use my sauna today, heat. I'm going to use my infrared light panel. I'm going to, try to take the dog for a walk, things like that. So I'm blowing off steam. So if you can focus on some form of self-healing, or maybe you just want to take some time to do your own thing, that's the best way to use this transit all day long. Very interesting also, something else that's going to be happening at the same time is we are seeing that the Jupiter Trine Pluto it's happening today. All right. So you've been feeling it all week because it's been within range, and you're going to start to lose it as we get later into June by the end of the week. But that is enhancing, anything in regards to positivity, communication, and the trine to Pluto. Likely when I kind of put these together, if you're really frustrated, then you want to work with like that moon sextile Venus and, the sun. Hey, this is what I'm doing, just letting you know, kind of keeping people informed so that way they're not taking it personally if you're kind of going your own way. And Jupiter Trine Pluto is like, I think I'm learning, right? I think I'm starting to believe that something needs to change, or that, the future is, kind of like critical. And what I'm learning, how I'm communicating, how I'm expressing myself to other people is definitely a very significant part of how the process of this day goes on Sunday. So it looks like the moon's going to catch the conjunction to Chiron just a couple hours after you guys watch this. So it's going to be right around midday, and it'll be at 22 degrees. And then after it conjuncts Chiron, which can be, not just emotional healing, but it can also be physical healing and accidents and things like that. Then we have the moon come into conjunction with Mars, and that's going to be in the early PM hours. It's almost like we can get emotionally wounded and then we lash out when the moon comes into conjunction with Mars. So today is a day to just be mindful of the heat, be mindful of the agitation, the aggression, the flames, and wait maybe for things to die down a little bit and for tempers to kind of cool as we're getting into, closer to the 3rd. Now, here's the positive effects that you want to watch for with the Jupiter Trine Pluto. Okay, so like I said, that'll be in effect pretty much all day. And it'll be exact in the PM hours right around the time this Mars Moon conjunction is happening. So powerful communication. It's like when you get that look when you're a little kid from your parents, and they just like look at you and they're just like, and like, oh, I better cool it. That's kind of how I see this. It's like there can be some really powerful ways of communicating that doesn't have to be combative, right? We can kind of stand up and make a point and like teach other people, or we can get like super frustrated and flustered and like kind of lash out. Words are very powerful this evening. Okay, so positive effects of this is going to be increased drive and ambition. And so that's the other reason why I say get active, all day today, is because of this. I think it's going to be about really having a sense of purpose and vision. That's the Jupiter-Pluto trine. It has a powerful influence, so it has the ability to inspire other people, often leading to leadership opportunities. This can be wonderful also for financial gains. Jupiter is the planet of wealth, right? But this is a wealth of knowledge, Gemini. It's a wealth of information. It's a wealth of communication. Granted, you know, the ruler here, Mercury, is at a critical degree in Taurus. So it can be about information coming in about money and resources for sure. And it could be for some people who are willing to act fast in situations that they can kind of get ahead of stuff and they can kind of have insight into some of these fluctuations that's going on with the financial system. Anyway, yes, there's potential for financial growth and effective management of resources, but likely it's due to strategic planning and foresight. All right, so you gotta be quick on your feet with these transits on Sunday. Watch for opportunities for healing and regeneration, because I think that Pluto gets a bad rap for being kind of like the bad guy, when in reality, Pluto is just saying, hey, things need to change. You know, there is not just this never-ending kind of period. Things cycle out. We have to have endings that make way for beginnings. Stuff does come to an end, so that way we can almost have like that Phoenix moment and be reborn or rebuild. And it wants to heal. Pluto is very much associated with healing, as is Chiron. So intuitive healing, psychic healing, trauma healing, you know, talking about, you know, what we're afraid of, what we've experienced, like that can be so therapeutic. And maybe that is the Moon-Mars aspect. That's like, you know what, I can't be scared anymore. I'm going to take a risk. So watch for healing opportunities on a deep level, both physically, but also emotionally. The only challenge is don't get too cocky. Don't get too overconfident. Be mindful that, you know, assuming that everything will work out without considering the potential pitfalls can land you in some trouble here. And there can be power struggles. Even though the trine's harmonious, you know, there's still potential for power struggles if the energies are not balanced properly, and intimidation tactics. So it's definitely going to be a big period Sunday, Monday, Tuesday for internet trolls. I could definitely see that being a thing. But also I think it's just huge for exposing and bringing out, unearthing information from the underworld, right? So that's a big thing as well. You know, really focus on goal setting and planning. You know, this is another day that's good to be active, but also be very focused on, what do I see my week going like? What can I get in order? How can I be more optimistic about where I'm going? Focus on both short-term achievements and long-term success. And you'll find that this energy is helping you plan strategically. Now, this is also a wonderful time for personal development, such as therapy, coaching, spiritual practices, to transform and empower yourself, because that's really what Jupiter trine Pluto is all about. But it may require you to listen to a self-help podcast, to pick up a new book in regards to relationships, to focus on a new habit or something that's going to help you kind of connect with other people and better focus on your goals. Watch for leadership and influence, because many people are going to feel very instinctually it's time to take on a new leadership role or a new position where you can use your influence positively to influence other people. And also, this is a good financial management day. I like that for financial management. I think that the focus on financial growth and resource management is going to be very obvious. So it may be a good idea today, tomorrow, to invest time into learning about finances and making strategic decisions for financial stability and growth. Likely this is diversification, because Gemini is about options and choices. So I think we're going to see some people being like, oh, I will throw my hat in the ring in that investment, or I do want to, you know, buy some metals, or maybe I will, you know, buy some cryptocurrency. People are going to be more open-minded about potentially the future, right? Trine to Pluto, of where wealth and resources are potentially going. Very, very busy day on tap. So I'm curious, leave me some comments, because I'm filming this like almost like a week in advance. So I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that it's a very powerful day. Then this is going to take us to the 3rd of June, which is Monday. And when we wake up, the moon is in Taurus. So it's in a comfortable space. It's exalted here. It's comfy. Early morning, we're going to see a square between the moon and Pluto. Now, I'm here in America, in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm on Central Time. So if you're somebody who's an early bird, you might feel the pressure of the moon square Pluto, but it's going to be dissipating as the day goes on. And when the moon is in Taurus, we really focus on what's going on with Venus, okay? So Venus is coming into conjunction with the sun now. So we're really feeling that conjunction. Technically, it's under the beams of the sun. So Venus is invisible and she's getting ready to make her grand appearance. So it can represent something that has not been seen yet or something that's going missing, getting ready to kind of reappear. So we're feeling that conjunction very strongly. This same day, Mercury will also be entering into Gemini. So we're going to notice that uptick in communication. We're going to feel the trine to Pluto where we're very stimulated and there's ideas and connection and communication, amplifying also socializing and probably setting social media ablaze. And we will also see that there is going to be a trine to Pluto. That trine to Pluto will be overnight, but I think you're going to feel it on the 3rd as well as the 4th. And as we go throughout Monday, as we go throughout Monday, we're going to see that Venus and the sun start coming into a sextile with the North Node. Okay, so that's nice too. It's a comfortable kind of lazy aspect, but if all that energy in Aries is, I'm healing, I'm working, I'm taking initiative, I'm being active, that initiation of new patterns and habits and healing techniques and tendencies is working well with the mind, Gemini. So this is like a week where I feel like people would really benefit from, having a mantra or something that you say every day, or you get up every morning and you write down 3 goals. Like, it's so powerful this week. It's really going to help you when it comes to your morning routine. It's really going to have a huge shift when it comes to your frame of mind. I really encourage you guys to, walk and chew gum because Gemini is good for multitasking. So it's like, for me this week, I'm like, oh, this is a good week to put on a self-help podcast and go for a walk, or, listen to something that's going to be beneficial, something that's going to be educational, or it's going to be really good for, learning about something while I'm being active. So I would consider doing that probably the 3rd and the 4th, to be honest with you, with these sextiles, because it's going to help us heal. It's also going to help us be more assertive in our communication and kind of getting things done. We might handle kind of the busyness of all that Gemini a little bit better. All right, so throughout the day, the moon is going to stay in Taurus. Okay, so it's rather unaspected for the rest of the day. There's nothing else really going on other than Mercury is getting very close to Jupiter and it's already trining Pluto. And that Mercury-Pluto trine, good for research, good for depth, uncovering things, getting to the bottom of matters. And it's at a 1 degree, so it's an Aries degree. So it's like really asking yourself, what am I afraid of? Where do I need to make a change? What is shifting for me? And for a lot of people, I think it's going to be about considering, the plan B or the second option or the second choice. I really like asking myself, because I have a Mercury-Pluto conjunction natally. Whenever I find myself kind of freaking out with that Mercury-Pluto and being like, oh my God, this is the worst situation, what if it doesn't work out? I always try to stop myself in that habit, in that pattern, and go, but what if it does? Right? Maybe I'm being super optimistic. What if it does work? What if it is okay? What if it isn't the end of the world? And I really feel like that's been really helpful for me and in having better kind of mental patterns and breaking out of that kind of fear mentality and being, I think, more in the driver's seat of making things happen rather than waiting for, the world to come crumbling down. So if you find that you're hitting a snag with some of the transits that are coming up right now, although most of them are positive, to be honest with you. If you're hitting a snag, lean into that. It's like, okay, well, what is the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen? Or, maybe that's not the only option. Maybe I can do this and I can do that. Try to keep an open mind is the best advice I can give you guys, because it's really going to help open the door to almost limitless possibilities. Jupiter trine Pluto for me is limitless possibilities. It's all just a matter of how you think about it, who you communicate with, and you may find that someone or something really helps you kind of broaden your perspective with this transit. All right, so the moon's going to keep moving through Taurus, still rather unaspected. It's not really doing anything into the PM hours. And we'll see the Mercury-Pluto trine overnight. So there could be some breaking news on the 4th. That's definitely a possibility. And when we wake up in the morning, the moon is still in Taurus. We're looking at what's going on with Venus. Venus is still in conjunction to the sun, getting ready to have her cazimi. And the moon is going to come into a sextile with Saturn. And this is where patience, persistence, a little bit of faith, belief, and a sense of reservation or intuitive knowing, psychic boundaries is really helping us kind of navigate things. Now, as the moon goes through Taurus, we're coming into the dark moon phase. So be mindful of that. This is when things are kind of getting really quiet and kind of clearing out prior to the new moon. The moon's going to have to hit a whole lot of planets before it comes into that conjunction with the sun and Venus. It's going to have to hit Uranus, where there's going to be some shocks and surprises, Jupiter, which is going to expand something, Mercury, which is going to be news, and then the new moon conjunct Venus. So likely very active time, the 4th, the 5th, kind of going into the 6th. Anyway, on the 4th, aside from the sextile to Saturn and Pisces, in the PM hours, we will see the moon come into conjunction with Uranus. I really feel, let's look at this. What's going to happen here? I really feel like the moon-Uranus conjunction here is likely going to be a little bit of a shakeup, right? A shock and a surprise. It is ruled by Venus, right? Venus rules Taurus, and it's at 24 degrees. So it's about something that is kind of otherworldly, something we don't see coming, something connected to something dissolving in regards to Taurus things, you know, finances or some kind of banking situation or something in regards to resources or water. Could be like flooding related. Storms that could be happening too, as we're starting to see planets coming into a square with Saturn. But right when the moon-Uranus conjunction happens, so this is going to be in the PM hours on the 4th, Venus is cazimi with the sun. So shocks and surprises much when it comes to finances. Now, when this happens, I think the markets are closed. So there's not going to be anything going on, but I'm wondering, is it the after hours, you know, that people are kind of shocked and surprised? Is there something going on with the crypto markets? So watch for this. Something like this is likely to emerge because there's too many connections here between these two, right? All right, so the moon's going to leave that conjunction to Uranus, and we see the Venus cazimi, and the Venus cazimi is going to be at 14 degrees. So once again, if you have anything, I would say 12 maybe to 16 degrees of Gemini, it's pretty prominent for you. There is some kind of rebirth period going on, something being reborn or revealed about relationships. And Mercury is the dispositor of this. So Mercury rules Gemini, and Mercury is conjunct Jupiter. Okay, so it's kind of saying like, oh, there's this thing that's like popped up, or this new person that I met, or there's this new financial opportunity, and it's like good. You know, Mercury conjunct Jupiter is, we're pretty positive and optimistic about what's coming. I think it appears to be a rather fortuitous twist of fate, to be honest with you. Conversations being sudden, you know, insights about love or some kind of investment or relationship. That's kind of coming to light. But, you know, usually when we see a cazimi, it's putting sometimes like a woman in a very prominent position out there and is being seen. So, you know, Gemini could be a female journalist. It could be spotlighting something about, you know, elementary education. It could be, you know, a news anchor or somebody who is, you know, kind of putting some information out there, some incoming news about something that's about to emerge. And just because of that connection with Venus and the moon Uranus, I think there's somebody who's forecasting some major fluctuation with the markets, and they're going to talk about it, put a video out about it or something, and then people will come back and be like, oh, they knew, you know. That's kind of my 2 cents. And by the way, this is at a Taurus degree. It's at 14 degrees. So it definitely all is money, resource kind of related, for sure, 100%. So the positive effects of this is just, yeah, watch for heightened creativity, improved relationships, financial clarity, which is funny because Mercury, Jupiter is very like, oh, it's like epiphany, you know, insight and information. Like, I think there's going to be, if you're somebody who's like a trader and you really follow like Twitter, or you're following like Reddit or other like subforums and stuff, the power of the information that is about to come through people who are really connected in certain groups, right? Certain information that's coming through certain groups, and people who are on the ins and outs, and they know the impacts that are about to happen with new technologies or going to be happening with cryptocurrencies or something. This is powerful. Like, this is definitely a week that I would say, like, if you're really serious about investments and stuff, you may want to do your due diligence and go out there and be like, okay, whose Substack can I follow? Or, you know, like, what trading account can I follow, or where am I willing to pay for a subscription, because you're getting insight into stuff that's going to greatly benefit some of your investments. This would be a time that I would do it. You should be supporting independent content creators anyway, and it doesn't matter if they're YouTubers, it doesn't matter if they're on Patreon, it does not matter. It's very clear that there's a huge shift that's been going on with media for some time, and it really actually I think started when the North Node was in Gemini, when we started seeing like stuff kind of breaking down with Twitter, and we saw, certain other accounts that, or I guess like apps that were kind of coming up where people who were getting removed from Twitter were doing their own thing, or we started to also see that there was information coming out about the interference with news and also elections and social media and elections. And so that North Node in Gemini really kind of taught us there's a whole other separate side of the conversation. Now, to be fair, you could turn on CNN and watch the news for an hour, and then you turn on Fox and watch the news for an hour, and they live in two completely different worlds, right? The truth is somewhere in between. That's what my husband always says. But I think that there can be polarizing sides to this as well. So it's not all easy. Gemini can say, well, it's this or it's that, but they can come in and they can be like, well, it can be a little of both, So on this topic, I really encourage you guys, if you want to learn about something, go and find somebody very knowledgeable. Find somebody who is willing to relay this information for a fair fee or subscription price, especially if they're releasing it to a group of people. It's going to be more affordable. And this trine to Pluto is going to say there's going to be a lot of information, good information that's going to come from certain creators or writers or journalists or whatever, teachers, who are willing to put out this information because they want to inspire, they want to educate, they want to help the masses. Watch for issues, I think, with the Venus Cazimi, though, that we can see that's like over-idealization. So sometimes with the Venus Cazimi, there can be a tendency for like love matters to be like blown out, where like we're seeing things with rose-colored glasses, and it can lead also to like unrealistic expectations. So be careful with whose advice you buy, especially as we're starting to see the Sun-Venus square that's building. So it's like, don't invest in get-rich-quick schemes. Don't expect overnight results. Don't anticipate that, some investment is just going to like skyrocket. Like, be practical, take time, and be careful with whose advice you buy. There can also be an amplification of emotions with the Venus Cazimi. So we can feel a little oversensitive, or there can be a lot of overwhelming things that are coming up in regards to relationship issues. Once again, go back, look at what happened in June of 2020. Think about what happened, because at the beginning of that month, we had a Venus Cazimi in Gemini. I think it was around 16 or so degrees, 18 degrees. And then we had an eclipse that was in Sagittarius. So that was a very, very active time in June of 2020. So you may see some similarities there. And now here comes, the Cazimi, and here comes Jupiter. That's going to be kind of reactivating some of these things. I think that this is a wonderful time as we're, I would say not just the Cazimi, wait till the new moon, that we're coming to a point where we can start new ventures. So whether it's relationships, projects, financial plans, wonderful for reflecting and insight on, your values, your relationships, your creative pursuits, and really asking yourself and having a better understanding and getting into better alignment with what you truly love and value. And also it can be a time where we're enhancing beauty and harmony in some way. So this can be, in getting involved in activities that are about beauty and harmony, such as redecorating, creating art, spending quality time with loved ones. Yes, but to be frank with you guys, I would not do it when the moon is, coming into a dark moon. Granted, the moon is conjunct Uranus, so we're saying, well, we need a change. We need to switch up with our resources. We need to change with our values. I want to change my style, whatever. But I wouldn't act on it while Venus is Cazimi, because it's coming into a square with Saturn. That's just me personally. Your chart could be different. If you have certain aspects, if you happen to have like a Venus in Gemini and like a Jupiter in, in Pisces, it might be a little different for you. This is where knowing your chart or getting a reading is beneficial. I would say aesthetic changes are going to be a lot better when we see, Venus going into Cancer, and we see, Venus trining Saturn and Venus trining Neptune. Why? Because it'll be long-lasting results, better for our homes, better for our skin, better also for us emotionally. It's also going to be something that's going to be more subtle. And I think a little bit more beautiful when Venus starts coming into a trine with Neptune. So that's just my perspective. But anyway, Just because some new fad or fashion is coming out, or just because some new phone is coming out or new car is coming out, does not necessarily mean that you immediately want to jump on it. Or you may not be able to. There may be things that just suddenly sell out because of the squares to Saturn, where it's going to be like some celebrity wears some, new handbag or, piece of jewelry, or they're driving some car and they're like, oh, I got to have that. And they're like, well, it's out of stock. You can't get it for a month. People will see some of that stuff that will happen. Can be good if you're a supplier, for sure. So we're going to see the moon continue to go through Taurus into the evening. It's going to break into Gemini very early on the 5th. So this is Wednesday. And this is as we're coming into the new moon. And like I said, the lunar transit's going to hit a lot of stuff. So here's what's kind of cool on the 5th. Even though it's a dark moon, and usually people are kind of crabby, I've noticed, as like the moon is going through the sign prior to the new moon, and really up until the time the moon hits the sun and we have the new moon. It doesn't seem that way to me. The moon coming into conjunction with Jupiter is positive, optimistic, communicative. The ruler of this is in the same sign. It's trining Pluto, so it's about major changes and transformation. So I think people are going into the new moon in Gemini being like, I'm ready to clear stuff out. I'm ready to start brand new. We're going to see a lot of people that are going to like clear all their social media. Like people sometimes will delete all of their Instagram and start over. You're going to see some of that stuff. You're going to see a lot of people who are going to go, you know what, I'm getting off of this platform. I no longer want to support this company. That could be the trine of Pluto. We may see a Bud Light moment. We may see something taking the internet by fire, where there's a lot of people sharing and being like, we will not support this, or this is not what we agree with. I can't tell you how happy I've been for the last 2 days hearing about just how much momentum was building around the WHO treaty. And even though it's not over yet, in the last couple of days, apparently, they've come out and basically said we couldn't meet our deadline. We couldn't get enough people to agree to stuff. We're seeing if we can, do this again in another 6 to 12 months. But that connection, right? That connection of everybody online and various people all over the world talking about it, senators and representatives in the United States sending stuff to, our current office, being like, we're not going to support this. States passing legislation, certain countries all over the world coming together, protesting and being like, we're not doing this, is the most beautiful reflection of this energy, where power and change can happen on a collective level, Pluto and Aquarius, because people speak out, they share things, they post things, they talk about it, they go into their local and their city communities, and they share information. A public forum is very much Gemini. This is our town hall meetings. This is where we go to local coffee shops. This is where we go to libraries. This is where we go to parks. The next meeting place for the next year is going to be locally. It's not going to be these massive movements that we're going to see on a national or international level. The change is going to come through getting to know our neighbors and learning how to communicate with other people and staying informed through communication, right? Gemini. And where some people are saying, you know what, I'd rather talk to people in person. I'm leaving my phone at home. I don't want Amazon spying on me, or Google spying on me. And learning that there is so much more profound insight that can be had through connecting and communicating, and that the transformation that's happening on a society level is that people are learning how to communicate again. They're learning how to talk again. They're not going to get kind of caught up in these squares between Pisces where it's scary, it's not safe, there's too much division, there's too much, cultural or racial clash. No, people need to recognize that we are all coming from the same place. We are all a part of the human race. We all have to treat people equally. We are all one. And I think that's part of the appeal of some of these trines to Pluto, is that we can see some real movement where we're kind of gathering up the troops just through communicating and expressing and being optimistic and joining side by side with one another. So I think we're going to see more of this. So I'm excited to see what happens here. So it's a really wonderful period coming into the new moon. I think that the morning of the 5th is just so optimistic. When we see the moon with Jupiter and with Mercury, you may benefit from getting up early in the morning. There's a positive idea. You're doing your intention settings. You're writing it all down. You're getting ready for your new moon. And then somewhere around midday, the moon's going to conjunct with Mercury. And that's about being able to communicate and express emotions and ideas and feelings. Still conjunct Jupiter, so it still feels big. And it can be, this is when the, big news is kind of coming out and it's breaking. And then that moon is going to start to separate. It's taking us further into Gemini. on the 6th. And one thing I would say before this is that the cazimi is still kind of in place. Even though it's happened, Venus is still in front of the sun, guys. So there's still some of these Venus things coming out. Because the moon is going to meet with optimistic Jupiter, meet with Mercury, the communicator, and then eventually land in a new moon with Venus. I'm going to tell you guys this week, you know, ask questions. If somebody says something's going on, say, why? Why did that happen? How do you know that? You know, help me understand. You know, what is the source? You know, where did you get that? How can I learn more? Ask questions. That's the most important energy connected to Gemini, is curiosity, information, learning. Do that as much as you can. So if you're questioning something, ask why. Be mindful that then we're going to come into the new moon, which is actually going to be happening on the 6th. So as we're starting to see the new moon coming in, which will be at 16 degrees, so it's going to be very early morning, at least where I am, Central Time. And it'll be a new moon at 16 degrees. So like I said, the cazimi, it has happened, but it's still kind of continuing because, you know, the Venus is still moving very closely with the sun. And this is the sun, moon, and Venus all at 16 degrees. So we've got that happening. You know, Gemini, a new moon in Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And Mercury is still trining Pluto, you know, by a couple degrees. It's still conjunct Jupiter. So it's still positive amplification of information. It's behind the new moon. So it's actually saying it pays to be tapped in, informed, spiritual, praying, meditating, you know, reflecting on our goals, where we're going, and like keeping this higher vision for the future. You know, maintaining that high vibe is so important mentally, but also in a sense of how we're moving through our day-to-day. The positive is that you're going to see this conjunction to Jupiter and the trine to Pluto, and it's promoting change. The challenge is that by about 2 degrees, the sun, moon, and Venus are coming into a square with Saturn. So it's kind of like the Gemini area of your chart is what's going to grow this year. You're going to see growth. And this new moon is about, what am I growing? What do I love? I only want to focus on the things that I love. How can I bring more abundance, richness, beauty, relationships into my life? And the square to Saturn is essentially saying, hey, you know, there can be some setbacks. There can be feelings of limitation. There can definitely be a limit as to just how optimistic can we be? And are we being too blindly optimistic? That's possible. Over the next couple of days, Venus and the sun will square Saturn, so you guys will feel that. And I feel like what can kind of come up is feelings of being discouraged. And I would say if you're discouraged during this new moon, don't get discouraged. If you hit a speed bump, if there's a delay, don't get agitated, don't get frustrated. Try to stay on that kind of higher mindset. Keep things sweet, right? Jupiter says that we need to be positive and optimistic. And I think with the Venus square Saturn, it's the best is yet to come. Good things come to those who wait. If you're willing to put in the time, the sacrifices, you know, if you're willing to kind of hold that vision for your future, to be optimistic and positive, new opportunities and change is definitely on the horizon. But we have to look at this as glass is half full, right? We can't be focused on what we don't have. We have to have appreciation for what we do have. We have to see the silver linings in things. You know, give yourself a pat on the back for the things you are doing right, for the things that are working in your favor. Use honey. You're going to get so much further with honey than you are with vinegar. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. And just know that there are so many amazing aspects that are happening at this time of the new moon that it's providing opportunities for deeper understanding. It's allowing us to be also very persuasive with our communication, because Mercury conjunct Jupiter can sell you anything. And when it trines Pluto, it can incentivize and convince other people to kind of buy into or work with or communicate with your cause. You can easily inspire and influence other people. There's opportunities for personal growth, strategic planning. The only downside is I could see that we could feel a little overwhelmed. That can happen with the intensity of Pluto. There can be some obsessive thoughts that can kind of come up. Yes, there can be some manipulative qualities. You know, certainly a Mercury trine Pluto, if it's not used appropriately, can be manipulative. But I say that also because we're starting to see planets coming into a square with Saturn. And it's very subtly manipulative. It's not like in your face. It's kind of like making people feel bad for the fact that you're trying to be positive and optimistic, you know? Saturn and Neptune are little stinkers in Pisces. They're just kind of like, no, we need to be afraid. We need to be separate. We need to dissolve. You know, we need to remove all of the boundaries. And you're going to see people very outspoken throughout this period that are going to be like, actually, no, we need to communicate. We can't have two sides anymore, you know, in any capacity. it's not actually helping people, because if you're just trying to break down all of the barriers and everything, there's also this melding together of things that kind of lumps everybody into one group, and it doesn't allow people to have their own independent individual voices. So, you know, pros and cons, obviously. But I think that I personally feel like this is a new moon that we want to be focusing on learning and education, communication projects, strategic planning, and innovation. These are going to be the biggest themes connected to this particular new moon. And obviously, you know, Pluto being involved, there is some community initiative here. So there is definitely an opportunity to have more community-driven initiatives and collaborations aimed at improving local environments and addressing communal needs. So it's really going to help unify, I think, neighborhoods and also communities and cities. It's very powerful for media and information, because a new moon in Gemini will do that. But the trines to Pluto that I'm looking at is just a huge focus on media, journalism, information. And I think this period could possibly be really good for those of you guys who want to launch new media projects, blogs, information campaigns, newsletters, all of that stuff. And I highly anticipate that there will be new opportunities for learning and education, such as the opening of new schools, educational programs, and public lectures and discussions. Somebody made a really amazing point on one of my comments, and they were kind of like just kind of giving me feedback on what I was talking about with, I think it was the Jupiter and Gemini transit video, where I was saying it's about elementary schools, you know, all over the world in general, but just kind of speaking from the American perspective. You know, Jupiter is about growth and knowledge, and it's also about books, and it's about reading and writing and handwriting. And that square to Saturn is where there's been limitations. You know, we've seen that there's been lower standards for education. There's been lower reading levels. There's been lower comprehension levels and, you know, vocabulary levels and communication stuff going on in our schools. And I think it's actually doing kids a disservice. I think about like growing up. I mean, when I was in elementary school, I think I was probably in, I don't know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. Started taking, you know, computer classes. That was like a big deal, you know, having a computer lab in elementary school and going and learning home row. And it's great because like I can type ridiculously fast, so that's helpful for writing this stuff. And I have a general kind of decent understanding of computers, but I think about how there's been this movement where we're doing everything digitally. Like nobody takes notes anymore. I prefer to do it that way. I like to do it the old school way on paper. Nobody takes notes anymore. Most kids can't, you know, read cursive, let alone write it. They're even taking down clocks in some elementary schools because kids can't tell time because it's not digital. This has just got me thinking about the squares between Gemini and Pisces, and where Saturn and Neptune has been a complete dissolving and a removing of structures and things that allow us to, you know, I think have better clarity, and there's a lack of that. So I'm kind of thinking that we're going to see like new movements when it comes to collective pod homeschooling, maybe new incentives for people to be being like, yeah, you know, there's going to be more community involvement with funding for books and better education and teachers and like structure. I really encourage if you have kids, be reading to your kids regularly with these transits, not just when they're going to bed. You know, Saturn Pisces can be about bedtime. This is about like taking time to take their tablet away from them or take their iPhone away from them and sit down and read a book with them, you know, or as a family. Or if they're just starting to read, don't be just having them read on a screen. They need to be reading on a book, or they need to be writing things out. You need to be pointing to things and being like, what is that? How do you say that? How do you spell that? Because it's so much about the connection of the hands and like what we're doing with our hands versus what we're looking at on screens. Certainly there's going to, I think, be a lot of information that's going to come out this year about, you know, issues with like ADD in kids and screen time, and where there is a connection and a correlation, and where we're actually less focused, paying less attention, and absorbing less because we're constantly getting that dopamine hit from our phones or our screens. And so I think Jupiter coming in there, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people are going to be discussing it. I love with the trines to Pluto, some of the combinations and the pairings that are going to start happening with certain content creators. I think you're going to see longer form content that's going to be happening in podcasts and other things that you listen to versus what you watch. So maybe get into the habit of listening to some of that stuff, you know, while you're going for walks or you're running errands or whatever, not just focusing on what you're looking at a screen, and take time to integrate it as well. I think that's like a big piece of the puzzle. Definitely with this new moon, you know, set intentions, use the energy to focus down focus on writing down your goals. Also engage in learning and listening. It's like a two-way street when it comes to this Gemini energy. So embrace opportunities to expand your knowledge, network and connect with people at social events or professionally when you can, and embrace change. Dream big, think big. This is the bigger picture of where you see yourself going with this particular new moon. All right, so then we're going to take this through the rest of the day. That moon will immediately come into a square with Saturn just hours after the new moon. So we're going to be like, yay, it's been sweet and optimistic, and here's a delay. So like I said, don't get discouraged. Thankfully, the moon is going to come into a sextile with Chiron and Mars, so it's going to be incentivizing us to kind of keep going. And we are also going to see, let's see, it looks like in the early AM hours on the 7th, so this is going to be Friday, you are going to have the moon square Neptune very early in the morning, so it depends on where you are, so you may miss it, but having Neptune hit 29 degrees and the moon hit 29 degrees, Venus Cazimi is still there. It does make me feel like this could be a day where you miss your alarm, you hit snooze and you forget something, or there's like a not being completely aware of your environment type of vibe, harder to emotionally relate. But it's so early in the morning that I think it's just more likely about impacting our sleep and like getting things going, or something that's a miscommunication or something that we forget. So we can be a little forgetful on Friday. But outside of that moon square Neptune, Friday is the quietest day all week. So it's definitely going to be a little bit easier to navigate because we are going to see that when the moon goes into Cancer, it's rather unaspected all day because that's going to be early morning. The moon's at home in Cancer, so it's very comfortable there. The moon is not going to be making any aspects at all pretty much the entire day until early the next morning. So make a note, Friday, things calm down a little bit, right? All right, so this is gonna take us now into Saturday, which is the 8th. And when we wake up in the morning on the 8th, the moon in Cancer is coming into a square with the north and the south node at 13 degrees. Can ruffle some feathers here for sure, because the moon here wants to nestle and get close and comfortable and wants to focus on home and family dynamics, and it's focused on the past, and there is going to be some friction Saturday going into Sunday, because we'll start to see the moon square Chiron and Mars. So this can on one hand be we're doing more domestic things, we're focusing on home and family, but on the other hand it can also mean that staying in the past can also kind of create some problems too. It can, be that we're being too overly emotional or too overly sensitive. So right off the bat, Saturday morning, the moon will square the nodes. Eventful things happen, fateful things happen when the moon squares its own nodes. It means that there can be things that's coming up from the past, or things where our emotions are kind of helping us get out of the past and into the future. And then that moon looks like it's going to come into a trine with Saturn. And that's going to be kind of the evening, evening around dinner time, depending on where you are. And the moon trine Saturn is going to stabilize a little bit. It's going to help us be quiet, reflective, and a little bit more aware of our emotional needs and boundaries. Still kind of feeling kind of like a stay-at-home vibe on Saturday night, but we'll see. We will also see Venus come into a square with Saturn, okay? So Venus will square Saturn first, then the sun's going to come into the square on the 9th, but we can look at these kind of together, where the sun and Venus together is I love talking about, I'm relating, I'm communicating, I'm changing, and the squares to Saturn represent the hiccup, the delay. Similar to right after the new moon, where right after that moon happens, you see the moon come into a square with Saturn. There's a lot of like, these are my new goals, but I'm afraid, I'm limited, something's holding me back. The sun and Venus coming into a square with Saturn also is, kind of like a challenging, you're feeling delayed, you're feeling held back kind of vibe. The square is actually going to be at 19 degrees. So that is a relationship degree. 19 relates to Libra. So if you're in a partnership, husbands, wives, business partners, clients, things like that, more difficult to relate. Venus, after all, is connected to the South Node. So it's about undoing, clearing out something about relationship karma. It's about moving out of a tendency to be too indecisive, too codependent, too much of a people pleaser, you know? And so I think with Venus being the ruler of the South Node and the Sun and Venus together squaring Saturn, to me, it's really spelling out, it's going to be a little difficult for relationships, issues with communication and values. And I feel like it's going to be about where we're not speaking up, or we're not connecting, or where we're avoiding, or where we're, you know, facing some hurdles that, you know, it's all the things we don't say. It's all the things that, you know, we lack when it comes to relationships in a sense of participation. So don't lose something or someone because pride is taking over and it's keeping you from, you know, apologizing or for speaking your piece or making amends, because that can definitely happen. After all, Venus is still conjunct the Sun, so it's a little blown out here. Things also feel a little intense because Mars is at 29 degrees, so that's already been happening, you know, 6th, 7th, going into the 8th, but Mars is about to change signs. All right, so in the late PM hours, we will see that moon come into a square with Chiron, so it's kind of, you know, later in the evening going into early on Sunday, the 9th. And Mars enters into Taurus. So we're going to be waking up on Sunday. Here we go. And the moon is still in Cancer in the early hours. It's actually going to start coming into a trine with Neptune. So I see this as, you know, sensitive, emotional, but 29 degrees is we're letting it go, right? Don't make me sing you the Frozen song. We're letting it go. We're releasing it. We're dissolving it. We're also really tapped in, really sensitive, very emotional, and a little bit more intuitive with that critical degree. And something that's going to be a little intense, like what's the theme with Sundays, man? I feel like the last 3 Sundays, there's always like one pretty significant lunar transit that's like, boom, this is happening. But we have yet another one. So the Mars ingress, I predict, is going to be a little bit more intense than people are anticipating. And here's why. First of all, now Venus has come out of the square with Saturn. So if I didn't say this, I should have, but financial transactions, commitments in relationships, investments, things like that, just cool it when Venus and the Sun are squaring Saturn. So that's going to be like the 7th, 8th, 9th. Not the best times for that. Not the best times for aesthetic things either, guys, okay? I predict this is going to be a pretty intense Mars ingress because Mars will be ingressing very late on the 8th, going into early on the 9th. Important because, like I said, it rules the North Node. Now it's moving through Taurus, which is about pleasure and taking its time and kind of savoring things. We will see later in the afternoon, the moon will move into Leo, okay, which is dynamic, creative, romantic, fun, right? But the problem is when the moon moves into Leo or Scorpio or Taurus, you know, it's facing some opposition or square from Pluto. So when the moon goes into Leo and it opposes Pluto, there is some kind of emotionally intense situation outside of ourselves that's really feeling threatening. It feels like it threatens our happiness, it threatens our joy, it threatens maybe even our relationships, our children, our creative process in some way. And we're looking at the sun. So the sun is coming into, or I guess coming out of the square with Saturn. So you're really going to feel the sun square Saturn more, the setbacks, delays, challenges with relationships. I mean, Leo is about romance, it's about drama. So we do see a little bit of that kind of get kicked up when the moon is in that sign. But the moon will not just oppose Pluto, which is a intense situation or confrontation outside of ourselves, involving other people. So these are our friends, our networks, but it will also square Mars. So Mars is going to be the focal point of a complex T-square between the moon and Pluto. And, you know, the moon is always the trigger point, guys. If you really want to learn astrology, then this is why I do the astro weather, is to kind of teach you guys that you may have a Mars transit for 2 or 3 days, but it may not get kicked up until you see some kind of aspect with the moon. And let me tell you something about the fixed signs. They don't want to change. So you've got Leo's ego, creativity, and passion. You've got Aquarius's futuristic, unconventional, thoughts for the future. And you've got Taurus that's like, I don't want drama. I want my ice cream and my comfort, my security and my peace, and my sweatpants. Like, I don't want to get involved in this So, the moon square Mars is situations outside of us where drama is getting kicked up. That is pissing us off. It's irritating us. It's creating some sense of friction. And Mars square Pluto, which will be perfecting more so the beginning of next week, but just full disclosure, you're feeling it now, is combative. It's threatening. It's intense. This is like a war energy. I don't like saying that, but Mars square Pluto is notorious with, we see terrorist issues, we see some kind of friction going on with military stuff. Although Mars is very slow to move in this situation, the moon in Leo can be about leaders, and that in opposition to Pluto is basically saying, okay, there's some major change and transformation going on with groups of power. And it's happening as a result of some kind of change with leadership and the pressure, Mars, that's being applied because of Mars things. Food, war, prices, resources. Don't you guys think it's interesting that I said to you that so much about the Jupiter-Pluto, and I told you guys this last week, I was like, Jupiter trine Pluto and the Mercury conjunction, you're going to hear about a bunch of people who are like, stepping down or, major changes in power. We heard that supposedly Jamie Dimon is supposed to be stepping down. I think it's from, is it Chase? There has been numerous, dozens people who are in parliament in the UK who are saying they're either not seeking re-election or they're stepping down. A snap election that's going to be happening there very soon. And well, here in the States, we're getting all ramped up for what's going on with, the beginning process of this fall where we're going to be having an election as well. Why is that? Why are we seeing a change that's going on with power, right? Well, maybe there's going to be more information. Certainly, I do think it's going to be making headlines. So I would be paying attention to where there's big CEOs stepping down, where there's big military leaders stepping down, where there's prime ministers stepping down, presidents stepping down. And it's happening because of some kind of pressure from Mars. So it's either because of maybe financial crimes that are getting ready to be exposed, maybe because there's pressure and there's, people who at the top want to see that there is increased tension going on within relationships internationally because wars make money. Maybe it's because there's going to be some potential future, I hate to say it, but like event, Mars square Pluto is deadly. That could be bringing up some conflict out in the world that they know is going to be, a little suspicious if they're hanging around. So I don't know, something about the 9th, not crazy. It feels very intense to me. Midday and the afternoon feels very intense to me on Sunday. And I think that the only positive, because there is positive here, is that as the moon continues to move through Leo, right? I'm looking for lemonade. It's going to sextile Jupiter, and it's starting to come into a sextile with Mercury and a trine with the North Node. So what does that mean? Well, Jupiter is about communication and positivity. Like, guys, all week when things get intense, you have to take a breath and you have to communicate through these things. Even though there can be some challenges and some intense things that are going up, if we're working with the sextile to Jupiter and Mercury, we can say, okay, this is what happened, this drama blew up, but let's de-escalate, let's talk about it, rather than let's just unleash. Because the energy we're going to feel the 8th through about the 12th with this Mars square Pluto is people are just going to want to unleash. There is going to be a tendency to be very combative, and you're going to see lots of friction because you're going to see a lot of stubborn people, right? Some positive effects, because there are some positive effects of Mars and Taurus, is I think that it'll help us be more productive, especially for long-term projects. Anticipate that there's opportunity for financial gain and feeling like we're more so incentivized to want to produce, build, or make more. And also, this is about enhanced enjoyment and physical sensations. So it's a great time to appreciate simple pleasures, sensual pleasures, physical experiences. Just watch for being stubborn or too rigid, because that's what's kind of coming up with Mars in that sign in the square to Pluto. Watch for overindulgence, because there can be a tendency to be overly focused on physical pleasures and comforts, potentially leading to laziness or overindulging. I kind of think of like Mars and Taurus as like Garfield, super lovey and like fat and like cute and like isn't combative, although he's a little nasty to Odie, but he generally just wants to like indulge, and it takes a lot to incentivize him to do something, kind of like Mars and Taurus, Mars in the second house as well. But yeah, I think that this can be a time for slow, steady progress. And when your energy and your efforts are focused on achieving tangible results and having pleasure, it encourages a practical approach to challenges. And so it may be bringing out stubbornness and resistance to change, but by understanding that these energies are coming and harnessing these energies, you can make strides in areas requiring patience and perseverance. Quite literally, from a very general perspective, I think like Mars and Taurus is like, you know, it's connected to the North Node. It means that we're supposed to be living abundantly. We're supposed to have land and connection to the planet and resources and food, that we are supposed to feel like we have the ability to, you know, spend, consume, to share, to indulge, obviously all within reason. But it's being threatened by Pluto, right? So you're going to hear a lot this week about like the future of the foods you shouldn't be eating and what you shouldn't be consuming and what you won't be spending. And people are going to start to look around and go like, oh, well, that's why prices are increasing, or that's why we're seeing so much like, you know, inflation or whatever. That it's all this incentive to keep you from having a physical experience, from feeling like you can have the things that you need. So when Mars is threatened by Pluto, even though Pluto's going to win, he's in the superior position, Mars is not going to go down without a fight. He's going to be like, no, this is my stuff. I'm not giving it up, right? I will not. And surprise, guys, pay attention, because at the end of this year, you know, Mars will go into Leo. It'll retrograde in opposition to Pluto. So it's going to be, that's when really the back and forth starts happening about, you know, like where we're making or taking steps forward to really ensure that we're reworking something about our joy, our creativity, our heart's desire. We're not feeling threatened by outside, you know, powers outside of us. And where individuals, artists, creative, younger people, children are really going to be kind of showing up. Guys, we had a Venus retrograde here last year. We're going to have a Mercury retrograde here this year, and then we're going to have a Mars retrograde here this year. So, you know, we're a little ahead of that. That's not really starting up until the summer, but that's going to be the time. And I really feel like use the energy with Mars and Taurus to start indulging in the things that you are going to find beautiful, but also valuable, right? Whether that's a relationship, an investment, a hobby, a garden, right? And don't let the doom and gloom of the world kind of, you know, squash your sunshine right now. Focus more on how you can connect, communicate, and what you can be learning, and how you can be creating a new path forward, forging a new path forward with friends, family, and loved ones. All right, guys. Well, like I said, it's the third Sunday in a row that things are a little intense. So let me know how this one goes. I hope that was helpful. I appreciate your guys' like, comments, shares, and subscriptions. Give me a thumbs up if this video helped you, and let me know what you make of these transits. What do you think about the trines to Pluto? What's your take on the new moon in Gemini? Do you think it's going to be positive? If you guys haven't seen any of those videos, definitely check out last week's astro weather. We've got a new moon in Gemini. And also horoscopes for June are already out, so you guys can check out some of these aspects for the various 12 rising signs. If you guys want to see more of my work, book a personal reading with me, or if you'd like to learn astrology, click the links below, head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. You guys can see all that information on my website. I am now taking readings in the month of August and September. So if you know you have a birthday coming up, or if you want to gift a reading to somebody, you can definitely do that. We have gift cards now on my website. Anyways, you can catch me back here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. We'll be doing live readings, so make sure you check that out on Thursday. We'll post the link in the community tab. For the rest of you guys, enjoy your weekend. I hope it's a good one. I'll catch you guys all back here next time. Enjoy.